Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Shaq Central here, and as I promised in the last video on the new gem setups for Vortex in 3.14, I said I was going to do this next video on Elemental Equilibrium, so here it is. Elemental Equilibrium, or a lot of people will say EE, is most likely, I would guess, the number one thing that I get asked about. It seems to be the number one most confusing thing about the build. I get a ton of questions about different interactions with it and ways that it works. And with the new Vortex FAQ that I put up on the Discord, it's the most upvoted question and response. So it seems pretty clear that it's both confusing and just something that needs to be explained a little bit more. So I'm going to do that today. And let's start with the actual keystone itself. If you are on the actual skill tree in game, you're going to notice it's right here. It's below the witch starting area and it's above the scion starting area. So Elemental Equilibrium is a keystone which says enemies you hit with elemental damage temporarily get plus 25% resistance to those elements, meaning the elements you hit with, and minus 50% resistance to other elements. That is incredibly strong if you are able to proc it in a positive way for you. And if you notice something that's going to be important in just a second, the downside is not as bad as the upside if you can make it work to your favor. And we're going to talk about that in a second. So with that being said, let's talk about it. So there's a few points that I want to make, and that are really important to understand this. And if you want more reading, you can go back to the guide, just like I showed in the last gem video, and it's just one little section before the gem links. In part 3, just open up the spoiler, and then 3.1 is going to talk all about elemental equilibrium. So a couple of main points, and I'm going to try to keep this short and brief and easily understandable and kind of digestible. So elemental equilibrium only procs on hit. That's one thing that sounds intuitive, but is very confusing for a lot of people when you're playing a damage over time build. So for instance, when we cast Vortex, when we cast Cold Snap, it's the same thing. They hit right away. As soon as you cast them, they hit enemies, and then the ground effect that's left behind does not hit again. Never again. So using our kind of in-game example, if I'm standing in my hideout right now, that hits. So if anyone that's standing in that AoE right away, they would get hit. But this damage over time that's left behind after that initial pulse, that never hits. Okay? Very important, because that means that for the entire duration of Vortex, over here for the entire duration of Cold Snap, for this entire time, they're not hitting at all. Which means that during that time, if we can hit with damage of another element, then we can take advantage of Elemental Equilibrium and gain more damage for our cold damage over time. So that's the first big thing. It only procs on hit. The second thing is the number one thing you need to avoid if you're playing a Vortex build, and obviously this would be different with every build that takes advantage of Elemental Equilibrium. For instance, the Burning Arrow, Isoro's Burning Arrow build, will use a Lightning Golem to hit enemies with lightning damage and make the Burning Arrow a lot better against bosses. But for us, the big thing you want to avoid is you don't want any added cold damage to spells. If you have added cold damage to spells, it's going to mess with the spells that you would use to trigger Elemental Equilibrium in a positive way, and it's just going to end up giving enemies more resistance to cold. So one of the big different questions that I get asked is the difference between added cold damage to spells and just added cold damage. There is a massive difference. One is fine, one is not. Just regular added cold damage is a thing local to the weapon. It does not affect you in any way. It's obviously a dead mod, but the big thing is don't add cold damage to your spells or you are going to have a rough time. Okay, with that being said, over the last few leagues, the average damage of just the average player playing Vortex, because of just improvements in how players have built built the skill, have geared it out. In general, we're doing a lot more damage these days. So to be totally honest, we've been testing this out for a while. This league, me and a few other people. This is a thing that causes a lot of confusion, or kind of just I don't know. People seem to get upset about change, but when I say this, people get up in arms. You do not need the positive side of Elemental Equilibrium for anything that is not a unique monster. Almost anything. There are very few. There are some times when you can get like rares with a bunch of stacked auras on them, like in Ultimatums is actually a great example. But for the vast majority of cases, this minus 50% resistance, you do not need that for anything except a map boss, an actual boss like Cirrus, Maven, Shaper, Elder, all that. Those are the only enemies that you need this for. Similar to curses, which will be a whole separate video. You don't need curses. You don't need elemental equilibrium to kill regular monsters, even rare monsters. Everything, especially when you're in the low life build, things are going to die almost instantly. You're going to basically use your skills. They're going to die. You don't need this. As a matter of fact, we do enough damage that even triggering the downside is still going to leave enemies dead almost immediately, meaning we don't need to constantly be hitting everything with elemental equilibrium in a positive way. If you're just going to flame dash into a pack of mobs and Vortex, they're dead. Doesn't matter if they have plus 25, doesn't matter if they have minus 50, they are dead. Now, this is a good thing. This means that this means two things. First of all, we only need to care about elemental equilibrium on very, very overstacked rares and bosses. That means less mental management for you, or it also means you don't need a trigger wand anymore. Now, don't hear me say that and freak out. That was we've had several people kind of go off the deep end in the Discord with this, but the trigger wand is optional. It is completely optional. We talked about this in the gem link video a little bit. The main use of the trigger wand is to use lightning skills to trigger elemental equilibrium constantly on as many enemies as possible. We just don't need to do that anymore. To be honest, I'm not sure if we needed to do that for a couple leagues, but it's just been the thing that everyone has done. And it's still the thing that the majority of players do, but it is like verifiable. Even at I have not like min-maxed the build this league to a crazy degree, but I've also been constantly comparing notes with the players that we have that have, and for both of us, the result's been the same. Everything dies. Just everything dies. The build is so good. You don't need a trigger wand. If you want to use it, you're still going to see a lot of benefit from it. It's a big quality of life boost. It's going to make it easier to maintain it even on bosses. It's going to help you maintain elemental equilibrium without just a lot of hassle. Just going to take a load off your mind. But again, like I talked about with the gem link setups, that means you can replace your trigger wand with, first of all, another damage mod, because you don't have to have the trigger mod, but also it lets you replace it with quality of life things. I have been absolutely loving using Frost Shield, using a Void Sphere. Tempest Shield is awesome. Even those things, if you want, you can automate them in a trigger. The point is, you've got options now, and that's really where I wanted to go with the end of this. I'm pretty specific in the usage of it in this section, just because, again, I have to have like a recommended version of the build. I can't put out like 6-7 different recommended versions of the build, or it would get insane. But you have options. Again, if you combine the knowledge that you have of this section now with the gem links, it'll help you make a more informed decision about what links you want to run, how you want to do your setups, and whether or not you want to automate either your wand spells or your curses and auras with Blasphemy, or just using Stormbrand. So for me, I've had great success this league. I don't have crazy damage numbers, but even then, just being a regular old low life build, I'm starting to push in, picking up crescents from the Maven fight, so I'm kind of at that end, 25 plus Watchstones fighting Cirrus and building up the Awakener level, and I don't have a trigger wand, and I'm doing manual cursing, and it's just crushing everything. It's really good, so give it a try. It's a lot to think about, but hopefully that explained a little bit more about elemental equilibrium. If you have any questions about it, please comment. Please leave a comment in the Discord. If these have been helpful, I'm just going to be trying to get out as much information for you, whether you're a new player, a longtime player. I'm going to be putting out as many of these as I can, so hit the subscribe button. Come see me on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, Sundays, 8:30, 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I would love to see you there. I'll see you guys in the next one. We'll have another video out very soon. I know how to talk. And yeah, have a good day, everybody. I hope everyone had a nice Mother's Day and you talked to your mother. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Have a good night, everybody.